So thanks a lot for this opportunity to hear us. Hope you are all doing well and you can hear us properly and see the slides. Felix, you can hear me, right? Madeline, you can hear me, right?
Yes, please continue.
Yes, perfect.
Perfect. So many of us might be aware how the Stonewall incident acted as a catalyst for the LGBT plus rights movement in US and around the world, which subsequently came to be known as the Pride movement. In this session, we would focus on how we have amplified this movement at Bank of America and building an ecosystem so that the teammates feel comfortable to bring their whole selves to work. In order to sustain this movement, we connect with individuals through our culture of belonging. We call it each one to reach one to teach one. What would you like the power to do? At Bank of America, we ask this question every day to all those whom we serve. The diversity of our employees, race, national origin, religion, gender identification, sexual orientation, ethnicity, disability, etc. All of this makes us stronger and is essential to our ability to serve our clients, fulfill our purpose, and drive responsible growth. Our commitment to diversity and inclusion helps make our company a great place to work. In 2009, LGBT plus Pride Network was formed at Bank of America. However, our Pride roots go back to 80s when Bank Boston formed the first gay and lesbian employee resource group. So today, we have a packed agenda. Me and my co-presenter Felix are both presenting and sharing our slides. Please continue to post your questions on Pathable under the poll tab. We will pause in between to take questions. There are 3 poll questions under the poll tab. It would be great if you can, take a look at them and answer. Before we go forward, maybe we can share a quick introduction about ourselves. I'm Sanjay Mitra, and my pronouns are he, his, and him. I lead the Treasury Finance team in Bank of America based out of India. I'm a big fan of diversity and inclusion, involved in LGBT plus and Disability Action Network in the bank since inception, and as one of the key facilitators. Personally, I think the ask here is equality for our LGBT plus colleagues, and as an ally, I stand by that. With that, I'll hand it over to Felix, my co-presenter. Felix, over to you.
Thank you, Sanjay. And hello, everybody. I hope you are able to hear me loud and clear. And thank you for taking the time out to attend this session. I'm Felix Alvaraj. I use he, his, him pronouns. I'm based out of India, and I've been with the bank for over a decade. I'm also part of the core team of the LGBT India chapter and out as a gay man at my workplace. In my personal capacity, I volunteer with LGBT organizations in Chennai, which is the city I'm based out of. I help run the Chennai International Queer Film Festival, which is an annual event, and I'm also part of the collective that organizes Chennai Rainbow Pride in the month of June every year. Some of the pictures you might probably see in your screen. Move on to the next slide, Sanjay. Thank you. So what can you expect from this session? We plan to cover the various phases of an employee resource group. As most of you would know, starting a new network chapter has its own set of challenges. Once the charm of the new has faded out, keeping the magic alive and continuing to make a positive impact takes a different set of approaches, ideas, and actions. The session shares experiences and explores ideas for not only sustaining, but truly growing a culture of belonging, by leveraging stories. A framework is being proposed for a long-term, sustained growth trajectory of inclusion efforts in an organization. We also intend to cover the LGBT landscape in India and how legal and social changes, among others, are making an impact. We find it very important to understand the communities we strive to serve. So you will find us often trying to draw parallels between the network lifecycle and about the community in India. All right, before we move ahead further, if you haven't answered the poll question on Indian LGBT community that we have put out there, I really would encourage you to answer them. It takes roughly about some 30 seconds to do so. Can you all try that if you haven't, please? Also, you can use the chat tab to express your views, like if a lot of you are already doing. The poll tab to submit questions to us. We will take some time out now and then to answer those questions. Also, you'll have a takeaway slide which will be available under the Files tab once the session is over. Next slide, Sanjay. All right, let's move on to talk a little bit about the LGBT community in India. One of the constantly paraded myth about homosexuality is that it is a Western import, which is not just untrue, but a denial of the diverse cultural history of India. The picture you see on the screen is a depiction of sex and sexuality on the temples dating back to 1050 AD. There are several more of them all over the country, which even prompted the Supreme Court of India to refer to them in their 2018 judgment decriminalizing homosexuality. The transgender community has a very rich recorded history in India. They have historically been invited to participate in birth, marriage, and death ceremonies, which marks their social acceptance, however limited, picture of which you can actually see up on the screen. Even that was eroded over the years, no thanks to colonization, resulting in the current standing, on which we will talk further in the coming slides. In comparison, the LGBT community has been quite invisible for most part of the history, and continue to have inadequate and a lack of positive mainstream representation even to this day. Let's see how LGBT organizations in India working in the sphere of activism look like. If I can see from the screen, they broadly fall under the categories. We have the classic non-governmental organization, NGO, which most of you would be familiar with. We also have CBOs, which is the community building organization, whose focus is to provide employment from within the community that they serve. What that means is all employees of an LGBT CBO must be members of the LGBT community. We also have quite a lot of unregistered collectives in India. These are collectives of individuals working for the community, but are still wary of registering for several reasons. Say, for example, inadequate legal recourse, which is also expensive. Then we have government oversight, which leads to privacy issues. I believe we all can agree protecting one's privacy is still a large concern for the community anywhere in the world. Moving on to the next slide. Let's take a look at the legal status for the community in India. We have achieved quite a bit of legal standing than we have had a decade ago. However, some major battles are yet to be waged. One of the meaningful progress for the queer movement in India started with the Nalsa verdict by the Supreme Court of India in the year 2014. It granted trans folks the right to self-identify, among others. NALSA verdict is considered as one of the very progressive verdicts which touched almost every aspect of a trans person's life for good. Unfortunately, the implementation was inadequate and botched up as compared to what it was on papers. In some cases, folks were asked to provide proof of surgery, completely denying self-identification. This verdict was delivered on 15th of April, which has since been observed as National Transgender Day in India. In 2017, HIV/AIDS Act was enacted, and it is the first comprehensive law recognizing the right of persons living with HIV. It couldn't have come in the right time, and I say that because the collective that I volunteer with effectively used this law to send a legal notice to a business in my city who not only discriminated against a member of the community, but also outed them for being positive. The business was forced to acknowledge and issue an apology. Such thing would have been quite unheard of if this law wasn't there at all. In 2018, Victorian era British law, which made its way into the Indian Constitution as Penal Code Section 377, was read down to not include consenting same-sex adults. This action effectively decriminalized same-sex attraction for the whole of India. Beyond legality, Section 377 has a history of being used to bully, threaten, and blackmail the LGBT community. All of this now has been put to rest, or at least we are getting there. In 2019, Transgender Persons Act was enacted. It is the formal act recognizing transgender person, and legally, it also overrides the NALSA verdict from 2014. But unfortunately, the community at large had to reject it for its numerous flaws. The act was a step backwards from the progressive NALSA verdict in many ways. It removed the right to self-identify. Now, a trans person has to go before a screening committee to prove they are trans. It also provides for lesser sentence for crimes against trans folks as opposed to cisgender folks. While these are some legal progress, there are more areas that don't even have legal representation. For example, an explicit penal code or law against harassment of LGBT individuals is yet to be found. Such a penal code will enable the community to file complaints which currently goes unnoticed. Conversion therapy is still widely practiced in 2020 and needs to be criminalized. We require legally guaranteed access to healthcare, especially mental health. Today, every time we need to look up for a community-friendly professional. Finally, there is marriage equality, which in Indian legal context will be a long-drawn battle, nevertheless, one that has to be kicked off. With that, I would like to hand over to my co-presenter Sanjay, who will speak on our experiences in starting and sustaining an LGBT network in India. Back to you, Sanjay.
Thank you, Felix. Do we have any questions that you want to pick up till now?
At this point, Sanjay, we can continue.
No. Okay, cool. Thank you so much. Thanks, Felix. So Bank of America is a strong proponent of having a sustainable employee network. We bring forth our network lifecycle model on how we can conceive, construct, and stay in constant state of evolution. A framework which tracks growth by exploring new ideas and leveraging stories. While the objectives are very different at each stage, but the bottom line reason of how we can help our teammates bring their whole selves to work remain consistent throughout the journey. So if you look at the 4 different stages, at pre-launch stage, we identify organization goals and obtain executive ownership. As we move up to the startup stage, the ask is to build foundation for a strong network. Moving on to the growth stage, we push for enhanced engagement and replicate industry best practices. Finally, at the sustenance stage, we stay focused at maintaining the rigor internally, engage externally to contribute socially. Throughout the journey, we have identified various qualitative and quantitative matrices to measure our success. So let's look at the stages in little more detail. So pre-launch stage. In the pre-launch stage, we try and understand our organizational priorities and get leadership support to start the network. This stage is about thinking big, thinking global, and thinking ahead. This stage is about asking a lot of questions, gathering information by building connects with other networks and opinion leaders within and outside the organization, and understand what has gone well, what didn't, and what could be replicated as best practices. In this phase, we try and develop very clear understanding of what, why, and how we want to achieve our measure of successes and with the resource that are available. The next step would be to socialize the same with critical stakeholders and opinion leaders and get their commitment for engagement before we start getting our executive buying in. All that said, we should talk about our allies, the most effective and powerful voice in this entire mix. So, survey says 20% of LGBT plus employees have experienced verbal bullying from colleagues or customers because of their sexual orientation within the last 5 years. Survey also suggests that 13% of LGBT plus employees could not feel confident reporting homophobic bullying in workplace. So goal of an ally program is to foster an environment where all employees are empowered to excel, remain engaged, and support to reach their full potential. Hence, gathering more volunteers with clear roles and responsibilities is very, very important. At the bank, we have an ally registration portal, and based on contribution, individuals move from bronze to silver, gold, and platinum champions. This also helps people always try to do more. As an ally, I don't claim to be knowing a lot, but I take keen interest in knowing issues faced by my LGBT plus colleagues, accepting each individuals for what they are. I do not do this because I have to, but because I want to. And talking about acceptance, Felix, can you share some lights with the Indian landscape in mind? And if there's any question that might have come to now.
Sure, Sanjay. We're good on the questions for now. So we will wait for more questions to trickle in, and then we probably will take it towards the end.
Sure.
Okay. Let's move on to talk about social acceptance in India. In general, the level of social acceptance in India is quite abysmal. The community survives on pockets of supportive lawyers and some healthcare professionals who have been trained and sensitized by different LGBT organizations working on the ground. We have only seen the demand for such professionals grow every day. Parental acceptance is minimal and usually a surprise. it's mostly like, your parents didn't do any drama? Well, lucky you. And it can actually go as dark as disowning and killing. And there are several true stories to that effect. The good news is corporate inclusion is rapidly growing and is a welcome move. However, overall, there's not so much out there for social acceptance, and there's a lot more work that needs to be done. Let's talk about what those are. We require a consistent message that sexual orientation and gender identity is not a choice. Even well meaning allies often get this wrong. Even though 377 is read down, social acceptance of queer relationship is far from becoming a reality. There is a high rate of loss of lives within the trans community, either by suicide or homicide. Targeted intervention is needed both by government and non-governmental organizations. Gender inclusive restrooms is yet to be made available in all public and private spaces. Community shelter for LGBT youth and those made homeless for who they are is pretty much a need of the hour. Also, discrimination-free housing is very much a focus for trans folks. They're routinely asked to pay double or more the going rate to rent a home, as the pool of homeowners willing to rent to them is very small. Meaningful access to education and jobs, and by jobs, I mean beyond corporate world, is very much a need of the hour as well. While this is the Indian landscape, even if you're starting a network in a different country, almost all of this will be applicable to you. Some of them might move across the what we have and what we need boxes, depending on the society you're part of. However, still relevant to know the community your network is working for. Back to you, Sanjay, for the startup phase.
Thank you so much, Felix. It was great to know. So startup stage. Startup stage is a stage where you put your vision into practice. This stage is more about looking internally, setting the stage to build a foundation for a very strong network. It starts with putting a core team who believes in the idea and is passionate to take accountability, ownership to drive agenda and show results. To keep it very simple at this stage, we focus on some distinct work streams. So break the attitudinal barrier through sensitization and communication. Initiate focused training sessions for the teammates. You relook at the organizational policies and change as required. Being visible through events and also getting leadership involvement. This stage typically sees gush of employee membership, network membership due to initial interest of being part of the ERG. We also see higher employee engagement with young leaders and volunteering in this case. So let's talk about in a little more detail on this particular thing. So at Bank of America, diversity and inclusion is driven from the top. Leading our effort is our GDIC, which is Global Diversity and Inclusion Council, which is chaired by CEO Brian Moynihan and provides strategic direction on how we approach diversity and inclusion as a company. Comprised of senior leaders from all lines of business, GDIC is focused on growing the diverse representation of our workforce. In 2015, we established also an LGBT plus executive leadership council made up of our LGBT plus executives across the world focused on the development, retention, recruitment of diverse talent and giving these LGBT plus leaders and employees a respected voice in the company. So these are all success stories actually. At the regional level, senior executives focus on implementing a consistent D&I strategy and make sure we are working in collaboration with routine updates and sharing the best practices. At the grassroots level, each country and market has an independence to figure out their own sub-strategy and implementation plan. So this is how our operating model actually works. Now let's move on to the next one, which is basically sensitization and communication. I'm sure that most of you would agree with me that attitudinal barrier is by far the biggest barrier in inclusion, and sensitizing our workforce is the biggest weapon to neutralize this. Hence, we make sure that we share mass mailers. As an example, the fairness at work that you can see on the screen, basic do's and don'ts. Even leadership messages and videos shared with teammates to reiterate on our promise of being a great place to work, importance of creating an environment where all employees feel that they have an opportunity to achieve their goal. There are also focused communication for ERG members. Now, let's look at the next work stream, education and policies. So we focus on driving inclusion in the workplace by helping manage biases positively and improving on our cultural competency. Our inclusion, learning and development programs combine virtual and in-person discussion to connect employees at across the levels in the organization. Learning programs focus on creating inclusive environment by illustrating how our differences makes us stronger. We provide multiple resources to help our employees grow professionally and personally. There could be multiple ways we do that actually. We do web-based training, videos, article, discussion guides. Since 2014, over 163,000 employees have actually participated in these inclusion learning programs. Looking at the policy, Bank of America was one of the first financial services company to offer comprehensive domestic partner benefits. We were the first financial institution to incorporate sexual orientation into our non-discrimination policies. We offer benefit that includes medically necessary treatment for transgender employees in US. We are very committed to expanding our transgender health benefits to other countries and regions. To support our teammates embarking on gender transition, our live event specialists provide confidential one-on-one support for both employees and their managers. Last but not the least, we need to talk about the events. We all have very unique perspectives. Many individuals are intimidated to interact with people who are different because they simply don't know what to say or do. So events are targeted to create awareness and an opportunity to create courageous conversations, thereby openly talking about this topic. At Bank of America, we have a series called Let's Get Real, Courageous Conversation series that focuses on issues impacting our communities and how open dialogue can help us gain this greater understanding and appreciation of one another. Expanding our perspective is a critical aspect of how we drive our culture of inclusion. There are opportunities for employees to hear from external thought leaders, internal executives from across line of businesses, and also we have opportunities where we hear such stories from our own out at work employees. We also celebrate Pride Month in June and Pride Week in November. During both these events across the globe, we offer opportunities to connect with our LGBT plus employees and our ally teammates to hear and share their experience. As you can see on the screen, we we participate in various events, and we also communicate and we openly talk about these issues. So, Felix, do we pause for any questions?
Um, yes, we can take this one because it's been asked about a couple of times. Everybody is very interested to know if this PowerPoint would be available to them post this meeting. I wanted to answer that question by quickly saying there is a limited takeaway slide that has been prepared, and we will make it available right after the session is over. Is there anything you want to add over that, Sanjay?
No, thank you so much. So, if there's no other questions, should I move to the next one?
I mean, if you're interested, there is one question that has been particularly targetedly asked towards you. And the question is, Sanjay, I believe I heard you self-identify as an ally. What inspired you to stand up for the LGBT community? Would you like to take that?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that's a great question. And I have been actually, just to answer this and maybe take a long answer. So I've actually been involved in almost 9 years with Disability Action Network in the bank. And as I said, that the only reason I have involved is I hate when I see discrimination and inequality. And the least that I can do is to be a part and stand alongside them. So that's the only reason I feel that as an ally, as I said, that I don't know much, but what I feel is the least thing that we can all do is equality and talk about this and make others aware. So I think that's the only reason that I am here. And so I hope that answered your question. So I'll move on to the next one. So now we are in the growth stage. So growth stage is about pushing for enhanced engagement within the organization and working with industry and peer organization to make our presence felt and gather winning ideas for replication. Global survey suggests that 73% of the closeted LGBT plus workers are more likely to leave their job within 3 years versus those who are out at work. Now, growth stage is about changing gear and getting our out at work employees take the front seat and as they feel comfortable. Let me quote one of our teammates who identified as a trans woman. It's freeing and energizing to strip away from the preoccupation, the exhaustion that comes along with trying to hide something fundamental to who we are. She has assumed the leadership role in one of the US chapter in the bank. Such stories help others to come out and be a part of this wonderful journey. I was very fortunate to have met her in Charlotte in our head office, and it was great to know her perspectives. Strong foundations work made at the earliest stage helps create a great opportunity to hire and integrate our LGBT plus teammates. We leverage multi-channels, starting from referral programs, campus recruitment, job fairs to hire people from community. We also hold focused manager, people leader training for better understanding for what they can expect and avoid unconscious bias. Let me in this context share with you that it is very important to create an ecosystem where the managers, the team, where the LGBT plus colleagues who is going to join are sensitized. So that's the reason we hold this focused sensitization sessions with people managers and leaders. Bank of America has been very visible in multiple industry forums. We are corporate partners to Out and Equal. We support the Trevor Project, the leading national organization providing crisis intervention and suicide prevention services to LGBT plus colleagues, and people aged between 13 to 24. Since 2014, LGBT plus employees and allies from across the companies have joined together and collected more than $1 million to benefit the San Francisco AIDS Foundation and the Los Angeles LGBT plus Center. These are few examples, but such involvement is always a win-win for all stakeholders. Growth stage is witnessed by multiple times uptick in network membership, out at work teammates, and event participation. Not only that, from the qualitative side as well, the employee engagement and the retention scores shoots up. The organization is recognized as a great place to work and also as an employer of choice. It would be nice to hear from Felix around how he feels on the livelihood situation, especially when we are talking about hiring and especially around the situation of pandemic. Okay, so Felix, do you want me to move to the next slide, or in case there's any question that you want to pick up?
We actually have a couple of questions, Sanjay, and
Great.
I'm going to throw one at you and probably take one myself. So the question has come, says, did you receive pushback or resistance from senior leadership when you started the ERG? How did you handle it? Do you want to take that?
Sorry, can you repeat that question, please, Felix?
Did you receive pushback or resistance from senior leadership when you started the ERG, and how did you handle it?
Okay. I think at Bank of America, the diversity and inclusion is driven from the top. I spoke about GDIC some time back. So when this agenda is driven from the top, our CEO and Chairman Brian Moynihan actually leads this effort. And the leaders across, the senior leaders, the mid-level leaders, they are absolutely sensitized and are very supportive about this. Now, in India, when we started this off, honestly speaking, we did not face much backlash, or as a matter of fact, we actually got all support from across the leadership. But I'm not sure whether that would be the case for other organizations. So if you actually flip back into the pre-launch stage, the pre-launch stage is a very important stage where we do a lot of research about, because it is all about a business case. And when we actually talk about this business case and make people understand that why it is important, and I have heard many other such sessions in Out at Work this time, everybody is talking about in the same lines that when people understand there's a business case behind this, people actually start supporting this more. While, as I said, equality and these basic things are very important, but when you actually talk about business, people understand it even more. So while at Bank of America, to cut the long story short, we were very fortunate, but I'm sure that if we do a strong research around this, and if we have the opinion leaders in the organization support this, then the leadership support at the top level becomes much more easier. I hope I have been able to answer your question. Felix, over to you for the other questions.
I'm going to try and take a stab at that question as well, Sanjay, if you don't mind. From a perspective as a gay man, trying to find resources in my organization. I wanted to say, if you are, you are a member of the LGBT community in your organization, and you're probably looking to find out for resource, my experience is probably goes something like this. I was like going around asking and trying to find out what is the resource and what is the company doing for, especially, and I'm very specifically talking about in India, right? And I knew there were global programs. What are we doing? So I kept knocking doors and asking questions, and then and sooner or later I just got introduced to the right people in the organization, and then I said, oh look, we should we're already starting a program. Why don't you come aboard and help us with it? And that's how I got involved with the network program, in my in India. So I mean, what I'm trying to say is, if you are somebody who's looking to understand what is your company offering, there is a good chance it's probably out there, and it's just not that. It's a matter of time that you learn who are the right people who can actually help you with it.
Yes.
Hope that kind of answers the question. Okay. I think we can get back to our slides, Sanjay.
Okay. So I was at growth stage, right? Okay. Felix,
So
over
let's
to you.
see. Yes, thank you. Let's see how the community fares in jobs and livelihood, and how the pandemic has impacted it. The transgender community suffers from high school dropout rate due to bullying and other discrimination, which results into lack of formal education, then translates to ineligibility to corporate jobs. Non-corporate jobs don't have the necessity policy or the will to hire transgender candidates. What that leaves the community with is to take up begging or sex work for livelihood. The LGBT community, on the other hand, has a relatively less school dropout. So formal education isn't a huge challenge. However, being out at work is being out at work is a challenge. Barring major corporates, it can cost you a job and open oneself to all sort of discrimination if you choose to come out, or worse, outed at work. I believe going forward, none of us can afford to ignore what the pandemic did to the communities we work for. In that sense, I find this where talking about it particularly very contemporary. While the worldwide issues such as loss of job and livelihood are also affecting the LGBT community in India, much the same, but there are also very specific issues that has actually come to light for the community. In India, culturally, kids continue to live with their parents beyond 18. This most often results in complete lack of privacy to explore their sexuality and gender identity. Lockdown, on the other hand, means that you're 24 by 7 being trapped with a disapproving family, especially if you had to move back to that family because you just lost a job. And lockdown also means unable to step out of your house or your homes to place that one feels safe to express oneself or meet people who are supportive of who you are. Back to you, Sanjay.
Thank you so much. Now we have reached the sustenance stage. This stage is about maintaining the rigor internally, engage externally to contribute socially. It is this stage when the excitement starts fading, metrics start dropping. It is important to keep the magic alive by continuing to do the basics right and at the same time look beyond the current remit. So in 2017, the LGBT plus Executive Leadership Council launched a mentor protege program for our out at work employees. Additionally, provide potential talent with opportunities for leadership roles and lead network agenda from the front. As you can see, Felix, my co-presenter, is a live example, and he has been doing a tremendous job for our chapter. Partnership with other network on common goal is a great option. So look out for other opportunities to help the community, especially with the advent of COVID. I'm sure there are multiple opportunities across all continents. Engaging with clients, customers, vendors to for LGBT plus related events, thereby spreading the sense of inclusion is a great idea. Before going to the final slide, do we have any questions, Felix? Felix?
We could take, there are a couple of questions, Sanjay, but we could do it at the last.
Okay, cool. Okay, thank you. So, to summarize, it's important to understand our organizational challenges and enablers in order to customize our own path. Make a business case for this inclusion, thereby engaging leaders, teammates, client, and customer. You remember I actually answered about this. Focus internally to build a network where teammates are open to share their views with no fear of negative consequences. A team which hires more LGBT plus talent and also push out at work to take lead, thereby sending strong signals of inclusion. Build a sustainable connection with peers within the industry and other networks in the organization. I wanted to close our presentation by saying a couple of things. While we tried to put a framework, but in my view, in our view, grow belonging and sustain progress is actually about people. It is actually about us. So let's believe that even a single voice can make a difference, as inclusion starts with the word I. I think the first question, actually somebody asked me, what drove me? So deep under, each of us know that we are attached to this because we have our own reason. So my reason could be that I feel the pain when I see people being discriminated or treated differently. I'm sure you know what is yours. So let's get personal, get others in the journey, and we will sustain this progress ever after. So with that, we will move on to the Q&A.
Sure. So there is one that came in addressing you, Sanjay. It says, Sanjay, do you face harassment or other negative consequences for being an active ally to the LGBT community?
Yes, I do. And it is all about we do here, but I think that's the job of an ally to make sure that we help everybody, all our LGBT plus colleagues, to bring their whole selves to work. How we do is a constructive conversation. When we have all of these events and we are being visible, when as a leader myself, and when we also engage our leaders, when they also talk in the same lines, we know surely the world is going to change. So it is all about that continuous effort that we continue to do, and I'm sure that there are opportunities and that where we make a difference, and I'm sure that it over a period of time, such consistent discussion, communication, sensitization, trainings actually have impact. So, but yes, we do face and we take it positively, and we have conversations, and we have seen a lot of positive developments taking place. Felix, do you want to add something? Because as an out at work, I'm sure that you must have faced a lot of such situations. How have you dealt with that?
Uh, sure, thank you. My problems as as an out at work employee is mostly dealing with the question, and it's a very Indian question, right? It might be a little bit strange to a lot of you guys hearing this out, but it's a very Indian question. Is to like, oh Felix, when are you getting married, right? And that's a question I often face at workplace, irrespective of whether I've come out to the folks or not. Because in India, being married is probably is what one of your fulfilling dimensions in your life, and that's a question I always have to answer. And the very technical answer to be that is, oh, my marriage isn't legal in India, but then again, for social necessities, you probably smile and say something different, defer the topic, and all of that stuff happens. But for me, one of the more challenges I always face is to worry about, okay, if I'm going to have to come out to this group of individuals or a group or another individual that working with, what does that mean to my professional relationship with this person if that person doesn't take it well? And that's a question I always every day face at my workplace. And even if this person doesn't really react well to the fact that I'm coming out to them, what will this actually mean to my everyday working to the work in my working relationship with this individual? Because that really, at my workplace, I probably think that makes more sense to me than just also being out at work. All right. Thank you for listening. I think I'll take another question. Um, so it says, how do you gather feedback from people who are not yet comfortable to come out? Thank you so much for this question, because it is something that we have been a question that you have been talking between ourselves a while of late. I do not have a clear-cut answer to you at this point as to what we have done, but what we have been trying to we have been talking and we're going to try do is create more avenues for people to say that they want to be out at work, rather than the only way that you want to be out at work is to actually tell the whole of your colleagues that you're out at work. Maybe it works for some people, it doesn't work for everybody. So we are trying to look at gather more avenues. I mean that I mean, some of the things that I have in mind and I have been discussing with my leaders are that, okay, why don't we have a mailbox where somebody is comfortable enough to actually send an email and say, look, I think I want to come out, can you guide me? And that's a mailbox that has to be like a very restrictive access, probably just 1-2 people that should actually have that access. So people are so, and maybe different other forums, keep looking at, maybe just something works for your organization, may not work for us, but try it comes with acknowledging the fact that one method of coming out at work doesn't really probably work for everybody. I've met folks in my organization who are probably yet to come out, and they are in some cases they're saying, okay, I'm comfortable to come out to the senior leadership alone. I'm probably comfortable to come out to other out at work employees. And there are still people who will probably say, oh, I'm not at all comfortable to come out. And they're just going to be people of all um, in the different journeys to come out. And I think we just have to find more tailor-made solutions to all of this.
If if I may just add Felix out here, I guess coming out process is basically the person needs to be comfortable. So at Bank of America, we absolutely have the out at work ambassador programs, but at the end of the day, it is for that individual to take that call when that person is comfortable. There are various avenues, as Felix had mentioned, and but as we always feel that when you do all of these right things, slowly people feel, and as you can see, previously we used to have out at work people from other locations come and do a fireside chat session. This time, for the first time in India, in Bank of America, we actually had Felix did a fireside chat session where he actually spoke to the entire population. Now such steps are big steps, and this encourages others to also slowly and slowly feel comfortable and come out. I hope we have answered your question.
Okay, so here's another one, Sanjay. It says, how do you recommend leveraging the US side LGBT ERG to introduce this concept to our India offices? How do we start? An overview session with employees? Would people show up even if it was virtual due to social stigma or fear of being outed? Do you want to take that, Sanjay? Or I can too?
You can go ahead, Felix. Thank
Okay.
you.
Um, so um, I have had, I have in my personal capacity, the folks that I volunteer with in my city, I have worked with different organizations, trying to help them do this, right? And there has been a mixture of success with some of it, and some doesn't work. But one thing I've clearly noticed is having the US ERG team just push it down to your India offices and saying, oh, look, this is happening and you better get on board, is something that really doesn't work. Because there was one in a very particular case where the entire HR group of the India office, emailed us and said, oh, all we have been told is that LGBT is, and I'm going to use my air quotes, I'm going to say LGBT is coming to India, and therefore we want your help to actually, smoothen the transition. Because what I'm trying to say is, like, those folks didn't even know what they are being asked to do, and they've been just told you just have to do this, and that's all they do. So my recommendation is that having the existing US side ERG network move this along is definitely a welcome move, but how much do we do that with sensitivity is very much a necessity. Because at large, we will have even if we look at the HR population or the HR population that's available in India, most of them are probably do not have the basic understanding of what an LGBT community is. So that's probably where I would actually start if I were to do it. Teach the people who are then going to actually go and talk about it in the India offices, and tell them why this is important. Create that compassion and empathy inside them as to what the work that they're doing and why it actually makes sense. Because a lot of this work means dealing with people and their feelings, and it's just, and as long as they realize that it is not something that you put on an Excel sheet, close it, and then say, oh, I'm done with it, and they know to understand it with empathy and understanding, and that's probably what you should all be looking at. And the question also says, would people even show up if it was virtual due to social stigma or fear being outed? And I'm not going to lie on that. It'll definitely be a very choppy start at the beginning. The question is, do we stop because even only 5 people showed up? The answer is no. Continue going, because I was asked by a corporate in one of the sessions that I had with them is, oh, we've been doing so much in our India offices, but not even a single person has come out. And the answer I had for them is, statistically, it is not possible that your office do not have any LGBT employees at all. But it doesn't mean that also you're not doing enough to actually, get them to come in. It simply means that they probably are in their own journey or in their own phase where they're not ready to come out. So don't take it too personal if nobody shows up, but it's very, very necessary that you have to keep continuing to do it, because somewhere down the line, someone's going to show up and say, oh, I think what you've done in the last session is very resonating to me, and I think I want to come out. I hope that answered the question. It's pretty a long drawn. Sorry about that. We are pretty much on the top of the hour, Sanjay. I'm going to try and see if we can at least take a couple of more questions. So one of the question goes like this. If I don't know if you have enough information to answer it at this point, Sanjay, but I'm just going to air it out. Is BOFA working with smaller or medium-sized companies who may not have as large an employee footprint? Difficult to see a path towards such a robust and inclusive program with a smaller employee base.
I'm sure that Bank of America do work in this space with clients, customers, and our vendors. And there are multiple such programs, but I would not be able to exactly pinpoint any program at this point of time because of the lack of details.
Okay, thank you. So I'll take one final question, Sanjay. This is one of the very initial questions that came in, and I kept it for the last because I might actually go on talking about it for quite a while. So I'm going to keep it short and let me try this. So the question says, why are the laws so different for trans persons compared to LGBT persons, right? Um, well, to answer this question, we have to like look through a lot of history of the community in India, but I'm going to try and see how I can put it very short. If you have noticed my slides and what I have been speaking about, I would have mostly talked about the issues very in two separate lines as to what is the transgender issue on a particular, if it's social acceptance, what is it, if it's the job and livelihood, what is it, what's specifically affecting the transgender community and what's specifically affecting the LGBT community, right? Because on the ground, the problems that these two communities face are very, very different. And some of which means that when you're trying to address some of these issues, the laws will also have to be different because some places you have to catch up one community to where the social standing the other community has, simply for a reason. For example, if you look at education, um, there is very few trans folks who actually completed their schooling and actually are in a position to actually be employed compared to the LGBT community, where being in the school is not actually quite an issue. And that's again, there's a whole other reason why it is so, right? And I mean, that will take a whole other time to explain. But my point is, the basics of these, where these two people, trans folks and LGBT folks, who come from, their social standing, where they stand in the hierarchy of economics, and what is the access, the level of access they have to resources, all of that is very different. And in order to bridge all of that, a lot of these laws has to be different. The work that we do also have to be different and targeted. I hope I kind of answered that question to at least some extent.
Thank you so much.
It's 8:05.
Thank you so much. I hope you liked the session as much we liked sharing our thoughts. Thank you so much.